Okay, we gotta have to take a look at the histogram quickly and then aperture values. So your camera will also have a histogram. You just need to find it. So just consult your user manual. The histogram is normally used for us to have a look to make sure that when we take a shot or just before we take the shot, that we do have details in the midtones, the shadows and the highlights. So I'm just going to run through this quickly and then I'm going to explain to you guys what that is all about. So your shadows are always indicated on the left of your Instagram. So you see it's broken up in 4 quadrants. So this portion will be your shadows, this portion will be your midtones, and this will be your extreme highlights. So I've just kind of generalized a little bit. There's actually a little bit more to that, but just for now consider this to be your midtones. So in this particular image you can see that there's no details captured in the highlight section, which means that you will not be able to retrieve anything if you know, any detail in your highlights if you want to do it in post-production. So this is just to indicate that there's too much shadows in your shot. This one means that your image was exposed a little bit more on the darker side. Could have been that you've been in a certain situation where you had more details in your shadow areas and so on, and a little detail in your highlight section. So this is a very good exposure. So normally you'll see a graph like this means that you know, you can see it starts right in the corner with your darker areas, and then it kind of builds up to the middle where to your midtones where all the detail is captured, and then it flattens down a little bit, but you have your highlights, and the detail in your highlights is still available to edit or bring back afterward because it's touching on the sides. Exposure to the right means that might be a bright day, you're busy shooting outside, so there's going to be much more light coming in, but this is just to show that the detail is not clipping. In other words, that little portion right there is not spiking through the roof, which means that you will have enough detail to work with in post-production. So you can bring back the highlights, you can bring back your midtones, and you can even bring back some of your blacks and darker tones if your histogram kind of leans a little bit more to the right. Overexposed, this is real easy. Normally this thing will just kind of spike through the roof there. As you can see, it's going to be a very light image. It's going to be difficult to kind of bring back the detail because, as you can see over there, there's no detail captured. So in your darker areas you're going to lose most of your details. There's a little bit of detail in the midtone sections here, but definitely not ideal. So these 3 middle ones, a little bit exposed to the right, the good exposure, or the one exposed a little bit more to the left, is viable to use with, but the best one would be to get a graph similar to this. Normally a good exposure will just look something like this. Just a little mountain right in the middle of the image. Just something that kind of goes hand in hand with this is your exposure compensation. So this will not work when you're shooting in manual mode because you already have full control, but it will work in all the other modes. Landscape, all the other modes, portrait, landscape, you know, and all the other modes that's visible on top of your camera. So what it does is, you know, you use this button, press it down, and then use your dial in the front of the camera to kind of dial up your exposure compensation to either to add more light to the right, or you dial it down to add more shadows to the left. So if you dial it up, then you will add a little bit more detail here because more light's going to come in. If you dial it down, you're going to add a little bit more detail to the left and to your midtones. So once again, different camera bodies, you're going to look for this in different places. The Canon will have it somewhere at the back, just on the side of the screen. It could be at the top as well. Nikon is going to be at the top, so you will find that little button looks like that, plus and minus. At the top, just next to the shutter button. And then on Fuji, you will have a little dial right on the right of the camera that you can manually dial up or down.